we had an extremely eventful weekend in regards to Silicon Valley Bank, and we are going to cover it right now. Let's go. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a great weekend. I know we definitely had an entertaining weekend. Some people, I'm sure, were scared. Some people were excited. Some people were cheering, I'm sure. And then other people were probably stressing. It all depends on what your situation is, what your exposure is, what your understanding of the situation is. Anyways, a flurry of information coming in from all sides. No idea what to take seriously, what not to take seriously. Anyways, I compiled a whole bunch of data points, and we're going to go through it because, okay, the stance I'm taking is this, right? We're going to paint a picture of essentially what happened, but we're also going to help paint a picture essentially to explain Silicon Valley Bank in relation to the history of quote unquote bailouts. Okay, because some of the players at Silicon Valley Bank seem to have been the same players from the 2008-2009 mortgage crisis. Just so happens. And the other piece that I'm going to pull in is essentially, I believe that the measures that the government took to resolve this issue is what's going to help fuel the next bubble that they're building. Because make no mistake, whatever bubble was forming with Silicon Valley Bank and Silvergate and FTX and Luna and all of this crap, this bubble just got band-aided, which means it's going to inflate bigger. Obviously, it's not going to look like the same bubble it was. It's going to be a whole new bubble, a brand new bubble, unforeseen things. Anyways, that's just my opinion, and I'm gonna try to show it. All right, let's go. Friday. Silicon Valley Bank collapsed with astounding speed. While the U.S. federal government stepped in to guarantee customer deposits, its downfall continues to reverberate across global financial markets, as seen in the subsequent shutdown of Signature Bank. Investors are on edge about whether its demise could spark broader banking meltdown. Okay, so Friday, we all heard the news. All of a sudden, Silicon Valley Bank, no more. There's a lot of different rumors as to what's going on, but essentially, many of their customers decided to conveniently all start to pull out their funds at approximately the same time. Now, I'm not going to make any assertions as to why or if those people are all associated with each other through some central source. I'm not even going to go there. But we do know that SVB, as of Friday, was in major trouble, and the markets started to show it. A little background about Silicon Valley Bank, right? I'm obviously not going to go into the whole entire roster, right, of their management, their directorship, and all of that. But I thought that this was an awesome tweet from Autism Capital, who decided to share with us who the chief administrative officer is at Silicon Valley Bank, Joseph Gentili. And he is the chief administrative officer at SVB Securities. And prior to joining the firm in 2007, Mr. Gentili served as the CFO of Lehman Brothers Global Investment Bank. Now, for the people who don't remember, Lehman Brothers was one of the first banks to collapse in a major way in the 2008 mortgage crisis. So I find it very funny that you made a whole bunch of terrible decisions, which precipitated the beginning of the largest set of bailouts in history, in U.S. history. And we figured this guy did such a great job. We put him at another bank. We said, you're obviously terrible at banking, sir. So what we're going to do is put you in a new position doing something like banking. I mean, the writing was on the wall. I am so shocked that none of us even heard that. And again, I'm sure that in hindsight, people have been mentioning this over and over again, and people like me just weren't paying attention. But anyways, okay, so there we go, right? We've got somebody who already has experience in collapsing banks. Put him somewhere else to, maybe collapse that bank. Who knows? Just my opinion. But hey, look at that. It collapsed in a major way, just like Lehman Brothers did. But the difference is Lehman Brothers didn't get bailed out. Nope, they did not get bailed out. All of their assets were sold off for pennies on the dollar. Anyways, okay. let's continue on. Let's continue on with the background. Okay, so we've got the sketchy CEO. Now, not only do we have the sketchy CEO, this is pretty interesting as well. So Silicon Valley Bank CEO cashed out shares and paid bonuses just before the collapse. Look at that. Silicon Valley Bank top executives sold over 4 million of the company's shares a few weeks before its collapse. There's no way they could have known. There's no way. It's just good timing. The bank also paid employees bonuses a few hours before its collapse. Guys, I'm just going to call coincidence on that. It's just a coincidence. Okay. But again, right? Like, it's okay. It's okay. It doesn't matter that, like, somebody who just destroyed one of the biggest, oldest banks in America moved over to this company, totally destroyed this thing. And not only that, but before it dies, making sure that the people who need to, or the people who are in the know, can dump their shares, number one. And number two, the employees who quote unquote deserve bonuses get theirs before they can't get them anymore. Okay, so that's a little bit of the background before things fell apart. We're going to get into the weekend, right? The weekend got very stressful for some people. There was people like Bill Ackerman calling for the government to immediately step in and make this bank whole before Monday morning. All right, let's take a look at how that looks. So we've got a tweet here out of Joe Consorti. U.S. officials weigh protecting all deposits at Silicon Valley Bank. The Treasury, Fed, and FDIC are reportedly considering backstopping. That's right. It's not QE. Okay? It's not, we're not bailing anybody out. No. We're backstopping all the uninsured depositors at SVB before U.S. markets open on Monday. Now, I have to admit, I don't disagree with Joe about this being the wrong move, because the reality is this, okay? And this was actually a discussion I was having with a fellow Bitcoiner. It's a double-edged sword, okay? Obviously, the bank does not deserve to be doing business, okay? They don't. They clearly were not able to manage their risk, and as a result, should not be managing other people's money. They should have zero control over it. They've proven that. Fine. The other piece to this is this. The people who had their money in this bank, the people who were invested in this bank, I don't believe that they should be penalized. But unfortunately, if the government wouldn't step in and provide this kick the can down the road technology, then people who actually don't deserve to be penalized would be penalized. Now, of course, this also brings up the philosophical point of, deserving something, not deserving something. Look, I'm 43 years old. The only thing I can say is this. We don't always get what we deserve. We get what we get. Okay? Like, that's just what happens, okay? Like, everything happens to everyone. There's plenty of shitty people out there who have incredible luck, okay, and have incredible things happen to them. There's also people, who are absolutely wonderful, honest, and, always just trying to, look out for their fellow man, and at the same time just be forthcoming with others, and they just can't catch a break, okay? That happens. And of course, the world is not polarized like that in black and white. Okay, there's a whole bunch of gray area in between. But my point is, I didn't want to make this some long rant, but my point is that it's a very slippery slope. Okay, obviously the people who lost their money, the depositors that would have lost their money, okay, those people do not necessarily deserve to be penalized, right? But at the same time, the incompetence of the people running this bank, they do deserve to be penalized. So this is one of these situations where our system kind of falls short. Anyways, all right, so we know that the discussions over the weekend are, how do we make this bank whole? But you can't call it a bailout, okay? There's no TARP, right? There's no quantitative easing. There's none of this. So we're backstopping. Okay, that's the term here. The new financial tool is backstopping. All right, and they're not bailing out the bank. They are backstopping the depositors. So now what does that mean? What does that look like? We're going to dive into it. Let's take a look. But actually, before we take a look at that, we're gonna take a look at Signature Bank. We thought that, I mean, for the most part, kind of assumed that SVB was going to be the only thing that was going to fail over the weekend. I mean, if you're not in the know, if you're not close to the information source, you may have assumed that, I mean, this is contained to SVB, and we're going to have to find out on Monday, which banks were invested in them, and find out, the other dominoes to fall. Well, this ended up dropping that Signature Bank becomes the next casualty of banking turmoil after SVB. And this was really strange because this just kind of quietly shut down over the weekend. It was like, oh, yeah, well, Signature Bank also gone. March 12th, state regulators closed New York-based Signature Bank on Sunday. The third largest failure in U.S. banking history, 2 days after authorities shuttered Silicon Valley Bank in a collapse that stranded billions in deposits. So did they close Signature Bank to stem something worse? It's very strange, though, because you see, Signature Bank didn't actually become insolvent. Depositors didn't attempt to pull all their money out. They were just closed. Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation took control of Signature, which had $110.36 billion in assets and $88.59 billion in deposits at the end of last year, according to the New York State Department of Financial Services. All of the depositors of Signature Bank and Silicon Bank will be made whole, and no losses will be borne by the taxpayer, the U.S. Treasury Department and other bank regulators said in a joint statement. Investors were unnerved by the speed at which startup-focused SVB, the 16th largest lender in the U.S., was toppled by customer withdrawals. The episode last week erased more than $100 billion in market value from the U.S. banks, prompting swift action from government officials over the weekend to try and restore confidence in the financial system. The FDIC established a bridge successor bank on Sunday, which will enable customers to access their funds on Monday. Signature Bank's depositors and borrowers will automatically become customers of the bridge bank, the FDIC said. Very interesting. I find this all very curious. So they set up this bridge bank, and I like that they use this very peculiar word. I've been reading financial news, and again, in the comments, anybody, please correct me. How many times have you seen them use the word born? Right? Like, none of this debt will be borne to the taxpayers. I mean, besides seeing it in the title of the movie, right? Like the Jason Bourne series, and that's spelled differently, of course. That's such a strange word that they used. I find that very peculiar and odd. Why? Of all the words, if you ask me, it's really just a bunch of noise, because at the end of the day, they're printing dollars. That's all they're doing. They're just printing dollars, and they're essentially playing with the interest rates. So why would you even, it's like, this is just, all this is, it's a show. We're watching a show. Everybody stay calm. It's okay. Stay in your seats. The show goes on, right? The show goes on. I think Pete Rizzo hit the nail on the head with this one. The first bank bailout of the Bitcoin era. So it begins. Indeed. What we were just explaining before, right? It's not a bailout. It's not TARP. It's not QE. It's not all of these things. And that's exactly what the corporate-owned media wants to make sure that we take away and that we think. Biden stresses that Silicon Valley is not getting a bailout. No. President Biden Monday stressed that Silicon Valley will not get a government bailout after regulators seize the assets of the failed bank. No losses will be, and this is an important 4-point, no losses will be borne by the taxpayers again. So they keep saying that over and over. Now, this is the third time that I read that. The money will come, this is the good part, the money will come from the fees that banks pay into the deposit insurance fund, the fees that the banks pay, right? That go into the FDIC. But none of this even matters. All of this is completely irrelevant because they all control the money supply. So it makes no difference. They're just telling you that the money's coming from somewhere else, but it doesn't matter. Oh, gosh, it's absolutely brutal. Now, what does all of this mean, right? Like, for me, that this ends up, we have a conclusion. What is the conclusion? My personal conclusion is that we are setting up the next bubble. And I think it's summed up very well in Neil Jacobs' tweet. The US has now set a precedent that all bank deposits are 100% FDIC insured. Banks can now take on even more risk with customer deposits. I think Neil hit the nail on the head with that comment, and that is exactly it. I truly believe that they are setting up the next bubble, and they're doing this because, you see, as we pay attention, right? As we pay attention to the financial situation, we see isolated incidents. We see events that, oh, Silicon Valley Bank just failed. Wow, that was unforeseen. All of this stuff, we have to take these events and look at them as isolated events. Then we look at the story. What is the underlying story? The underlying story is this. We have money that is backed by absolutely nothing, that is printed ad nauseum, created anytime it's needed. Actually, it's even created when it's not needed. It's just constantly being created. So we have this running narrative in the background. The money printer never stops. The dance between the the dance between the interest rates and the money printing and all of this and the monetary policy and the Fed meeting. This is all a show, because at the end of the day, they can't stop printing the money. So what we need to do, since we know we can't stop printing money, what can we do? We can keep creating stories, and we can keep making these stories more and more elaborate in order to validate why we are printing this money. But you see, the money's being printed anyways. That's the thing. This is what nobody understands. It was going to be printed anyways. They just give you this story. Hey, look. Yeah, we've got this problem now. Yeah, well, now we need to fix it. The point is that the money was broken already. They were already going to have to fix it. All they had to do, though, was create a story so that the rest of us could buy it. The other piece to this is this, right? What is this making us do? Number one, we're at a time where the government is people, based on corporate-owned media, showing that there's a lot of people losing faith in the government. So doing something like this helps restore, or at least create the perception of a restored faith in the government, right? It does that. The other piece to this is a little bit more probably tinfoil hat. Let's look at Neil's tweet again. The US has now set a precedent that all bank deposits are 100% FDIC insured. Banks can now take on even more risk. So CBDCs do not need banks. CBDCs can be issued from a central authority, such as the Federal Reserve, such as even the Treasury, such as whoever the hell. But the point is, they don't need a whole bunch of banks. So this is a very interesting scenario where what's going to happen is that the banks conveniently will have to take on somehow exuberant amount of risk. I don't know why, but I believe that that's what's going to happen. And this is going to set the stage for what will seem to be a massive, massive loss of faith in the banking system. I do believe that this is the bubble that is being set up next, and it is being set up specifically to target the banks. Think about it. Since 2008, all we're seeing is bank failures. The people in charge, the people that their job, their whole reason to be, their whole reason for living, right, is that they manage money, they manage funds, they are the banks. They are the essentially the last line that we have. So it's going to take a long time to destroy the faith in banks. And so it's been going for a while now, right? It's ever since we saw that 2008, 2009 mortgage crisis, the banks are constantly under scrutiny. Are they well capitalized? Do they have enough funds? Can they withstand another event? It's just constant worrying about the banks. And now all of a sudden, we're going to empower the banks to be 100% FDIC insured. What shenanigans are they going to pull? What shenanigans are they going to be incentivized to pull? And then, of course, the story will be how they cannot be trusted. Anyways, just my thoughts, guys. This was a super long clip. I apologize, but there were just so many different angles to this story. I had so much information over the weekend. I really did my best to consolidate it. I hope you guys liked it. Smash the like, subscribe. Catch you all next time.